The exercise files for today's course are located in the video description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hello everyone, my name is Joe Patty and I'm going to be facilitating this course for you today. Today we are talking about Microsoft Access. Now Access is a powerful database management system that allows you to store, organize, and also analyze data efficiently. Imagine you have a ton of information scattered across different files and spreadsheets. Well, Access helps you bring all of that data together in one centralized database. You can create tables to store your data, design forms for easy data entry, and also generate reports to summarize and present your information. I'm very excited to take this journey with you and help you become proficient in this essential database tool.
Looking to support our channel and get a great deal? Become a member today to unlock ad-free videos. That's right, your favorite courses without a single ad. Interested in a specific video? Purchase one of our ad-free courses individually. Looking for even more? Gain access to exams, certificates, and exclusive content at LearnitAnytime.com. More information can be found in the video description below.
The first thing we're going to do right now is just get into Access and just take a look at some of the features of Access, including the ribbon, the quick access toolbar, and just other pieces of the interface. So I want you to open up your Access. I'm going to just go to my Start menu here and look for Access in all of my apps. So if you're running on Windows 11, you'll see it's one of the first ones because it's in alphabetical order. And I'll give that a click. I'm going to bring it over here on my main screen. And this is what brings you to what's known as the startup page. So this startup page is where we can start to create a blank database, or we can even use any of Microsoft's pre-existing templates. So they have quite a few of them. They even have a Northwind Starter Edition. This is just fake data for you to get started and manipulate without affecting your real data. We're actually going to use a file very similar to this Northwind. This is the newer edition. I like to use the older edition just in case you're not running on the newest Access. So if you're running on anything, from 2013 all the way up, you'll still be able to follow along with me. Now also here, you'll see that we have our recents. So files that we've recently opened will be accessible to you right here. Once you're ready to go, we're going to click on the blank database. And it's going to open up this little dialog box and say, well, what do you really want to name this database? And then we could click Create. But since we're using our Northwind, we don't have to do that. We're going to actually just open up this Northwind file that we have. Now, when you first open up the file, you may need to click Enable. So if it does say something like it's blocked, you might have a yellow bar going across, and all you have to do is hit Enable, and then you should see this Northwind Traders pop up. So this is just like a little welcome screen for you. You can click OK for that. You don't have to worry about anything else. And you also see this main switchboard. You can also exit that out. We'll talk about those a little later, but for now, just exit those out and we'll be here in our interface. Now, right away, you can notice this is Microsoft, right? We have that default look of the ribbon right up top. And inside of our ribbon here, I'll just put ribbon, we have our different tabs, like the Home tab, or the Create tab, or External Data tab. Now, besides our tabs, inside of those tabs, we have what are known as command groups, like the Clipboard command group, Sort and Filter command group, Records command group. And then inside of those command groups, we have our commands. So anytime that we're going through this training, I'll always let you know where I'm going. I'll say, hey, we're going to go to the Create tab. We're going to go over to the Forms command group, and we'll click on something. All right. That way you can follow along nicely without worrying of where did Joe go. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the quick access toolbar. Right up top, we have access to the save, undo, and redo. And of course, you can click the little drop down and you can choose whichever commands that you want to include in this quick access toolbar. It's totally up to you. This is just all preference at this point. You can even choose to show it below the ribbon. So it's down here. So if yours looks like this, you can always switch it back to show above the ribbon. or if you don't use it, you can even hide the quick access toolbar. Now, depending on what sort of version of access you have, yours might look a little different than mine. So if it does look different or you don't have certain things, no worries. It's just because I'm running the newest version of access on my 365. Another thing that you will notice over here is what's known as the object panel. This is all of the different objects in access. And we're going to go through all of these different ones. Now, you'll see here that we're starting off with like tables, queries, forms, reports, macros, and modules. If you do have something in between reports and macros, it might be something known as pages. Pages aren't used anymore, so if you do have pages, you're more than welcome to right-click on it and remove it. It's just something that's not utilized anymore. We have other updated versions. So if you do have pages, just give it a right-click, and then you can choose to hide it. Once we come back, I'm going to go over all these different objects and what they do, and then we'll get into how to create tables. So as I said before, the object panel in Access shows the different types of objects you can create and use in your database. And you can switch between object categories by just clicking on the tabs on the top of the panel. So you'll see here, if you click this little drop down, you can choose to see all of your Access objects. So if you do not see them all, you can always just switch. You can also filter just to see certain ones. But I want to see all of them, and we're going to navigate to category and choose object type. So if that's not set up, feel free to set that up right now. Now, what you'll see here, our main objects are going to be tables, queries, forms, reports, macros, and modules. Tables, we'll talk about those, and if you give that a little click, that caret, you'll see that there's pre-existing tables in this file. So tables are a collection of data, and they're organized in rows and columns. You can use tables to store information about your data, such as customers, or as you can see, our products, or even orders. And tables are truly the foundation of any relational database. So we're going to be working with those a lot, and that's what's going to help us to build the other objects. The next object in our list here is known as queries. And once again, you'll see quite a few of these. Now, for these queries, a query is just simply a way of retrieving and displaying the data from one or more tables based on certain criteria. So you can query to use filters, sort, group, calculate, or even summarize the data. Queries can also be used to modify or delete data or to create new tables. And we'll talk about the difference between our select queries and our action queries. But right now, you'll see a ton of them. Now, you may see some queries in here that you don't recognize. These are ones that I played around with in the past. So, if you do see something like this in your file, you could just right-click and delete these queries. Click yes. You can right-click on fun. Delete this one as well. And yes, but you should just have a clean slate. The next type of object in Access is known as a form. Now, a form is just simply a graphical interface that allows for you to view, enter, or even edit data in a table or a query. You can use forms to make your database more user-friendly and also interactive. Now, forms can also contain buttons, menus, and other controls that perform various actions. Not all the forms are going to be something that you're going to be using to enter data in. You might have saw that there is the startup form, and if you double-click on that, that was that form that's telling you that this is a sample database that you can learn Microsoft Access. So right here, we notice that this form is more of just a visual for you to display information. It's not anything you really interact with, that's just pressing OK and closing it. And it also opens up the main switchboard, and we can close that too. Reports are our next object, and a report is formatted to present data from a table or a query. So you can use reports to print or display data in more of a professional or attractive way. Now, reports can also include things like charts or graphs, images, or even other elements to enhance the data's visual appearance. And we'll be talking about those in our next video. Right now, we're going to really be focusing today on tables. Now, let's take a look at our next two objects. One's called macros, one is called modules. So macros is a set of actions that can be performed automatically, right? So it's kind of like a workflow. You can use macros to automate common or repetitive tasks, such as maybe opening a form or running a query or printing a report. And also, macros can be triggered by events such as clicking a button or opening a certain database, right? So when we first opened up this file, you saw that automation where it opened up the startup page. So that could be looked at as a macro. Modules, on the other hand, well, modules are a collection of VBA code. VBA code is Visual Basics for Applications, and it's Microsoft's coding language. It's a code that can be executed by Access. You can write custom functions with it. You can use procedures or perform more complex or specific operations. So they're a little more powerful than macros. And modules can also be created with event-driven programs that respond to usually user actions or even system events. Now, if you do see pages, once again, I said this in a previous section, but you'll see reports and usually pages is there. Well, a page was a feature in Access that allowed you to create web pages with the data from your database, but it's no longer supported by Microsoft. It's actually been replaced by other tools like Access Web Apps, or you might have heard of Power BI, right? Business intelligence tools. So that's why pages aren't really popular, and Microsoft kind of did away with them. So therefore, we're not going to use pages. You can safely remove it from your database. Simply right-click on it once again, and then you can select delete, and it'll delete it out. It will not affect the rest of your database. But those are the main objects we're going to be going over in this series for Microsoft Access. So make sure you have this. You take a look at all the data in there. If you see anything that's a little out of order, or maybe you saw something that I have that you didn't have, no worries. I just deleted those out because I was playing around with this data before. So the next thing we're going to talk about is our first Access object, which is tables. I want to just take you through a couple of tables and showcase a couple of really cool things that tables can do. So in Access, you'll see the list of tables. Remember, click the caret if you don't see them. And let's say we want to open up, I don't know, customers. We open that up. You'll see that we get customer ID, a little cutoff, and we get a ton of other information. And it pretty much looks like, well, Excel, right? We have our rows, we have our columns going across. At the bottom left-hand corner, we see how many records there are. There's 91 rows in this case. And also, you may notice that this table comes in its own window here. What you're going to want to do with this is you can either just move it around, you can have multiple windows open, multiple tables. But if you click on the little expand button, right, you can expand and lock the table into the view. Now, up in the top right-hand corner, you'll see two sets, right? You'll see this one set is pertaining to the table. This one's pertaining to the actual Access application. Now, one of the big differences between something like Access as opposed to Excel or Smartsheet or even Google Sheets is that these tables have relationships in them. And you may notice that little icon where we can drill down on information. Now, before we drill down on the info, I do want to see the rest of my customer ID. So if you notice anything squished up, very similar to Excel, like if this was a little more squished and you're missing some of the data, you can go to the top left-hand corner here. And this will, once you click on it, select all the data in the table. And then you can go between each one or any one that you like. And once you get that left and right arrow, you can double click and it will auto adjust the column width for you, which is nice. Now we can go to customer ID and you'll see here that we have a ton of little plus icons. This is because of relationships in Access, which we'll talk about in a moment. But for now, if you click that little plus icon, you can actually drill down on the data. So if I click the little plus icon, it then brings me from the customer's information to the order that they placed. And if I click on the order ID, once again, you can expand this. That way we can see everything. If you click on the little plus sign here, it expands it to what products were in that order. So there's a relationship between the customer table, the order details, and also the products detail. Now, if you want to close that back up, you're more than welcome to. Just click the little close icons there, and we're good to go. So once again, this is due to relationships that we're going to talk about in a second. So if you go to any other table, like let's say we did employees, they'll say little plus signs there too. So you have the employee and what sort of orders and who their customer were in that order. And then also maybe orders table has that too. Now we just opened up 3 tables. If you want to close them out or, resize them or anything, you're more than welcome to. Remember, you can always go to the top right-hand corner and click the little X icon. That way you can close out that table. So I'll close out that table. Once you make any changes to like the layout, you're not actually affecting the data, but you're affecting like the column width that we just did. You could say yes, so you don't have to do it each time you open the table. I'll close this one too, and close this one. And I'll say, do you want to save changes to the following objects, customers, and orders? You can say yes. We didn't make any big changes. Or you can say no to all. And that just will bring it back to whatever the default was. So let's see how these relationships were formed between these tables though. See, when we're talking about data like this and they have relationships, you have to either build them, right? By going to the database tools and going to relationships. So click on database tools, go to relationships. And you can either build them by clicking and dragging, or if your naming convention is pretty amazing, the relationship will be created automatically. And then you can pick and choose what kind. So you can move these around, you can make them bigger, smaller, see all of the different columns that are in each table. And I just want to show you what would happen if there was no relationship, right? Let's do, for instance, let's try this one. So we have the order details with the orders. As of right now, if we go back to the table, we can use the little plus symbol to drill down on the orders, right? So if I go to orders table real quick and I click the little plus symbol, it then goes and it shows me the products. Or if I go to order details and I click, right, it'll show me the products. So I really do like the fact that we can create relationships and then we can drill down on data. But what happens if you delete a relationship? Let's say between order details, order ID, and orders order ID, right? There is a relationship on that. If you right click, you can even edit the relationship and save order ID, order ID. So I'm going to stop the enforce referential integrity on that and just click OK. We'll talk about that a little later. If this doesn't delete for you, we'll do a different example, but I did set it up so that we watch out deleting our data, but let's see what it does. Okay, it deleted it. So if you do have to do that extra step, feel free. Now that I deleted that, if I go back into, let's say, the order details, you'll see that plus symbol is no longer there. Or if you go into orders, that plus symbol is not there, right? And that's because we just took the relationship out. If we reconnect the relationship, then the symbols will reappear. So if I drag, and it doesn't matter which way, you could drag from this way, or you can drag from this way. It'll create that relationship. I'll click create. And then if I open up, let's say order details again, or orders, that's where our relationship was, we can now drill down again. So on the orders table, that's where our relationships allow us to drill down. So try that one out. So once again, if you delete this relationship by right-clicking delete, and then you go to orders, nothing shows up here. But if you reconnect that relationship by clicking and dragging, click OK, and you go to orders, then you'll see the plus sign where we can drill down on the data again, and it shows us the products, which is pretty cool. That's really important. That's something that Excel doesn't do, or even Smartsheet, or even Google Sheets. So try that out real quick. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about queries. The next type of access object is going to be our queries. So you can just close out if you had the relationships. Make sure you have it formed again. We definitely want this relationship. And then close out the relationships window. You can choose to keep the layout. Once again, it's only talking about the layout of you moving things and resizing things. So you could say yes. Now, one of the things in Access is that any changes you make, like for instance, creating those relationships or taking away, those autosave, so you don't have to worry about it. You'll even see right now there's no way to save anything because it automatically saved for us. But when it's asking you to save the layout, it's just talking about the things that you moved around or resized. And I typically say yes on those because I don't want to have to constantly go in and resize them. The next Access object, though, we're going to talk about are queries. So once again, we have all our different queries here that were pre-created, and you can click into any of those. For instance, click into like invoices, double click, you can resize the window, and it looks very similar to a table, right? But it's actually coming from multiple tables, this information. And the way that I know this is if you go over to your datasheet view. Right now, if you go to the Home tab and you go to the first command group, which is the views, you can switch between different views in your queries. Right now, we're in what's known as the datasheet view, where we're just seeing the data in a sheet. You also have what's known as SQL view, where you could see the SQL code that's built while you're creating these queries. So if you do know any type of SQL coding language, you can actually just write this code out and build out queries from code. Or they have a really awesome view called the design view. So if you don't know SQL coding, that's okay. You don't have to use or know SQL code, also known as low code, by using the design view, because design view is a low code, so you don't need to know how to actually code SQL to create your queries. So I'm going to go over to the design view, and you'll see here, and you can also resize all of this if you like. You'll see the different relationships, all the tables that are being used in this query. We have quite a few of them, like products, order details, employees, orders, and all the relationships are there. So right now, this query uses 6 different tables. And you can now pick and choose what you want from each table that would make sense. And that's what creates your query. Okay? Now, you can also use different things like code filters. So right now, if I click run, it's going to bring me back to my datasheet view and I'll see everything. Right now, let's say we want to, I don't know, maybe I just want to look at all the countries from Sweden. So I can go back to my design view, and under the ship country, under criteria, and we'll talk more about this in detail when we get to our next video. But for this one, ship country is going to be the criteria that we want. So I simply want to see everything from Sweden. So all you have to do is go into the ship country column here and go to the criteria view right here. And you're going to put it into the ship country criteria row what you want. We want Sweden. So just under ship country, click into criteria row, type in Sweden. Case sensitivity doesn't matter here. So you could do all capitals, all lowercase, capitalize Sweden. And when we run this, now we're only looking at Sweden. No other countries here. So we have about 89 results. And this is a way that we can start to run queries and look at certain pieces of data, which is pretty cool. Now, if we wanted to, we can go back once again, right? We're going to go to Dropdown, go to Design View, and we can get rid of Sweden. Now, if you do know any type of, and I'll run that again, by the way, and now we're seeing all 2053 records. If you know how to code SQL though, so for those of you that are just coming to learn Access now, but you know SQL code, you can write your code. So for instance, if I want to see maybe just USA, or if I want to see Sweden again, this time I'll use SQL view. And at the bottom here, after the from clause, I'm going to press enter. I'm going to write where clause. The where clause is a filtering system in SQL. And then I can reference the table name in the column I want. So I want the orders table, the ship country column. So I'll say orders dot ship country, all in one, ship country, no spaces there, equal to, and then we can put Sweden. Or maybe this time we want to do USA. Try USA. Just like that. And when I click run, you could say, okay, just make sure you put your semicolon at the end there, just right there, and remove it from the top one here. And now we're only looking at USA, so 336. So yeah, I mean, for those of you that don't know SQL code, you're probably thinking, well, Joe, I really don't want to do that, right? I don't want to have to write the where clause and order or ship. I don't know any of that. You could do it this way, or you could just take all of this out, right? And run it again. And now you see everything, right? Or we could have just went to the design view, which is a little easier. Go to ship country and type USA and then run it. And now we're only looking at USA again. And if you look in your SQL code, right, SQL view, the computer coded it. So it's a little different the way the computer codes it out. The syntax is a little different, but as you saw before, we could do it either this way, or we could have just done it the way I showed you, right? Where we don't need all those parentheses. That's a lot of parentheses in there, so I don't like to use them right away, unless you're gonna create more than one filter, right? So I'll go back to the design view, and if you want to get rid of this again, just backspace it, run again, click the run button, and it brings back everything, all 2053. So 2 ways to do the same thing, right? You can either use the SQL view if you know SQL code, and you can write out your where clause, or you can use the design view and just simply click into the criteria, choose what you want, and then click run, right? So try out both if you like. If you're like, I really don't want to do the SQL part, you don't have to. Just do design view then. But try it out. And then when we come back, we're going to get into forms. The next object type we're going to talk about is forms. So I'm just going to close out this query right here and give that a click. If you want to save the design changes, it's totally up to you. I'll just click no on this one. And then I'm going to close out that queries tab. And let's take a look at forms. So as I said before, forms are pretty awesome in terms of being able to visualize our data in a meaningful way and being able to enter in the data. So you'll see here there's quite a few different forms that were pre-created. Let's just take a look at a couple of them. Let's take a look at the customer phone number and open up that form. You'll see here the form showcases sort of like a little table and also a little index here that we can search through so we can get to the J's if there were any. Let's see, D, B, P. And it brings us to all the contacts, and you can also click the button for all. So they're very interactive and great way to display information or even enter in information. So let's take a look at one that enters in information. Let's look at orders. So these are really nice. This is where we can print an invoice. So we can choose who we're billing to, and then we can pull the invoice out. Just like that. So this is pretty cool. You click, it puts in the person's address, their trip to, who the sales rep was. Once again, these are all the different ways to click. Now, once you're clicking into these fields, by the way, it is changing the raw data. So if you click on this person's name and you change your salesperson in the data, it would do that too. If I change this person's order to be United or Federal, it'll change it in the data set. So these are not only ways to enter data, but also manipulate data. Let's also take a look at ones like startup form, which is that welcome form we showcased before. So if we click on startup, this is just to display information, same as our customer phone list where we're just displaying information with some buttons. So forms can be displaying information, entering data, or even a way to navigate like main switchboard. So if I want to go look at the products information, it'll pull up the products form. Or if I look at the orders form, it brings back that form from before, or suppliers. You'll see they have some really cool like little background images you can use. It's all different types. So we can use forms to enter and manipulate data, We can use them to display information like the startup form, or we can use them as a way of navigation. And we could just close that out. We'll talk about how we can create forms in our other video, and we'll probably get to forms and also being able to create reporting as well. But take a look at some of these forms, and then we'll also look at our reports coming up next. So reports are a great way to display information, right? And there's a couple of really nice ones here. Let's take a look at, no, let's do the invoice form. Let's take a look at that one. So this is a really nice form right here where we can take a look at all of the invoices. So what products we're selling, who this person is, where we're shipping it to and billing it to. And we can even click on the bottom left-hand corner to go to the next page with everyone else's information. So I can even navigate my other pages. And if you want to click into just quickly zoom in, see the information, and then click back out, you can. And this is a great way to just grab the information from our tables or queries and then put them right into a form or even a report and then quickly print them out. So it all works hand in hand, right? Tables, you have all the data in the tables. You then query the data that makes sense to you. Things like the person's address, their orders, their products that they ordered. And then we can create forms to also enter in that data or manipulate it. And then we can use reports to actually pull it out into a nice little report, something like an invoice, right? Let's take a look at another one too. By the way, you can go to the last one. So if you click on this little arrow, we can go to the last page and see how many invoices we have, 191, which makes sense because that's how many orders we have. And then we can go to the first page if we wanted to. So each one, some of them are 2 pages long, some of them are just 1 page long. Then we can close this out. You can, this time, since it's a report, it's going to be put in a print preview mode. And you can close it out by clicking Close Print Preview. It's a little different than like forms or queries or tables. I'll just give that a click. Let's take a look at another one. Let's do sales by year report. That one looks good. Double click. And right away, you're going to see this little dialog box pop up. Since it's asking us sales by year, we have to tell it, well, what year do we want? So I want to look at all of 1997. So the beginning date looks good, January 1st. The end date looks great, December 31st. We're going to show the details if we want to, and then we'll click OK. And it creates this awesome looking form. Once again, you can click into it. Let's see, we have page 1 of 13, so there's 13 pages here. How many orders in each quarter. This is really awesome information here. So this report is a great way to take a look at how many orders did we ship per quarter? How much should we make in sales? What were the actual order dates or the ship dates or the IDs of the order? How much was it in each sale? So once again, we can close that out. And if you want to click on it again, then we can change it. Maybe I want to look at 98 this time. So I'm going to choose 98 and then click OK. And it looks like we only had 2 quarters in 98. So our data only goes 2 quarters in to the year of 1998. But once again, some really awesome looking information here. So play around with some of these, take a look. There's quite a few reports. You can look at the list of products. This one's a really fun one. You can take a look at all your products, what the units are, the category name, all our food products here. And there's about 5 pages of this. Or catalog. This is a nice little fall catalog here. So you can make catalog entries here, which is pretty cool. We can look at the product ID, the product name. People could choose what they want to order. So there's quite a few different ones. Take a look at some of them. Remember, close print preview to actually close it out. And then we'll go over macros and modules next. The next object we're going to talk about in Access are macros. Now, once again, a macro is a set of actions that can be performed automatically by Access. So you can use these macros to automate things like repetitive tasks, And you'll see here that inside of our objects, we have a couple of macros that were pre-created for us. Now, if you double click on it, nothing's really going to happen here because once again, it's just going to happen on the back end. It's just a bunch of tasks. So if I double click, nothing's really doing anything there. But if you want to take a look at them, let's right click on sample auto keys. And we can either click run, which once again, nothing is going to really happen at this point, or we can right click and go to design view, and we could take a look at the actual macro. Now, you'll see here that it'll tell you this runs automatically when you open the database. So that's pretty cool. Automatically opens up the database and runs this macro. Now, the macro here, it says run the customer phone list, print macro when Control P is pressed. And you'll see here that the macro name, customer phone list, print, and then repeat. Now, you can add other options here or actions. And if you click the drop down, you'll see a ton of them. We have if, right? We can use if this, if that, if then, right? And do a conditional expression there. We can also, I'm just going to exit that one out. We can also add in things like find a record, and then we can choose what to find. So there's a ton of awesome little prompts here that we can start to use in different actions. So they have a ton of them, whether we want to open up a certain form. So say, okay, which form do you want to open? So it's pretty awesome. This is actually something that the sample auto keys comes up. So if you remember, and I'll click no on that, when it automatically opened up that form for us when we started up, it automatically started this by the use of a macro. Now we're going to get into macros and modules a lot later in the session here for access, but it's good to know what they do. And once again, they are a way to automate steps that can be repetitive or common tasks that you don't really just want to do on your own, so you create a macro for it. The next thing we're going to talk about is modules. And if you remember, a module is a collection of VBA code. So VBA, Visual Basic for Applications code, is the programming language or coding language for Microsoft. So if you just close out the macros and you open up modules, you'll see we have two of them here. They have a startup and a utility functions. If you double click on startup, it's actually going to open up our Visual Basic Applications editing tool. So if you've done any sort of VBA in like Excel or Outlook or Word or PowerPoint, you probably have seen this before. Now, this is the code for the startup, and you'll see that we have option compare database, and then you'll see the line underneath. Everything in green is going to be just a note to yourself, and then this is the actual code. You'll see there's some if statements in here, if else, and we'll go over a couple of these different codes later on in the series here, but take a look at some of this. And yeah, each line represents a separate code. We have here this main switchboard code. It's to close the form, so close the startup form, used an onClick property for OK. So do command.close, do command.open form. I have quite a few of them, right? So remember, those are going to be written to create either custom functions or procedures, and they just simply perform complex or specific operations, and they're a little more complex than just a simple macro, so we create the modules. All right, so I'm going to close this out, and you can also close this window out as well. Nothing's going to be changed there, and you can close this, and that is all of our different objects that we're going to go over for today. Now we're going to jump in to our next section, which is going to be all about tables. All right, I'm going to show you how we can create tables from scratch, how we can manipulate tables, everything about tables we're going to go over, and then also building relationships. So before we get into creating our own tables and opening up a fresh Microsoft Access file, what we want to do is take a look at the things we can do in the table view, right? Things like data entry or deleting data, or even just updating data. So I'm going to open up the employees table here, give it a double click, and you'll see here, once again, we have our employee data, 9 records. We can drill down on the data, see which employees are working with which customers, even click down to see each customer's products that they ordered. And let's say that I just want to simply update something. So I'm going to go to this first one, and it's as simple as clicking in there, backspace and whatever's in there, and you'll see the little editing tool right there. So it's got this little pencil icon, if you could tell, and we can start to just type in whatever we want. So type in your last name or whatever you like here. I'm just going to type in my last name again, or I could type in just some random name. Let's do Joe. And when I click away, it autosaves it. So once again, remember that in Access, a lot of things are autosaved, especially when working in tables. You can also add yourself to the table. You'll see at the bottom here, we have the new. Now, before I do that, you'll notice that some of my headers are squished in. Remember, you can always click on the little left-hand corner there, double click, make everything look pretty. That way I know exactly what I'm entering in here. And what I'm going to do is just click into new, and you don't have to put anything for the employee ID. That's actually auto-populated, but we can put in the last name. I'm going to put in my name. You can press the tab key to go over. I really like that. Put in my name. Just pick something. Maybe I'm the CEO. Mr. Put in a birthday. I don't mind which date you put. Let's just select a random date. You can also enter it in if you don't want to have to use the actual calendar system here. So I'll just put in something like this. When was I hired? I don't know. Maybe I was hired 10 years ago to the date. Why we keep it simple? And then address. Maybe I'm in, let's just do San Francisco. Put in whatever code you want. And I'll just put in USA. You don't have to fill everything out, but there we go. We now have a employee at the bottom here that's added. Now you might be wondering why it says 11 and not 10. That's because I probably was messing around with this data previously and, and added, because anytime you delete, for instance, if I want to delete this now, I can just select the entire row, press delete. It's going to say, are you sure you want to do this? Okay, of course. Yeah. Now I deleted it, but if I add someone else now, myself again, you'll notice it's now a 12. So it doesn't refresh. If you did want to refresh, there is a way. We'll talk about that a little later. But yeah, now I'll just put in some fake data again. And then I'll delete that out once more. And you just have to simply click on the entire row and press the delete key and then confirm. So try out a couple of those things on your own there. And then when we get back, we will get into being able to sort our tables and also filter our tables. So now we're going to talk about sorting and filtering. Now, you'll see up top, if you go over to your Home tab, we actually have options under the sort and filter command group. And you'll see here filtering, and then you'll see some sorting options. So you'll notice that there's two types, right? We have ascending and we also have descending order. So we can quickly use those two buttons and click into whichever column we want. And you'll notice that it doesn't matter which row you're in. You'll see what column you're in by the yellow highlight there. And let's say maybe I just want to sort this by first name. So I'll click ascending order, and there we go, sorting it by first name. We can also sort it in descending order. Doesn't really matter which one we choose. And then once we're done with the sort, we have this button here called Remove Sort. So that Remove Sort button is going to help us out. We'll give it a click, and we're back to normal in our employee ID sequential order. So that's one way to sort. Another way to sort is you'll notice that on our column headers here, we have our little drop downs. And if you click on that drop down, we get our filtering options, and then we get our sorting options. And once again, these two buttons are identical to the sort and filter buttons up top here. So both the same thing. We'll give that a click, right? So we could sort this by title, A to Z, or maybe Z to A. And if we want to remove it, we can either say clear filter from title, or we could just go up here and remove sort. So whichever one that you like. I'll click remove sort and we're back. Now, besides being able to sort, we also have the option to filter. And we're going to talk about filtering right now. You can click into that little filter option and it's going to open up the filter pane. It's the same exact thing as just clicking on a little drop down and we get the same identical thing. So whether you click on filter here or you click on filter here, it doesn't matter. Now, this is our most default filter that we can use. We can start to filter for whoever we want. Maybe I only want to see sales representatives. So I'll click the drop down. You can either deselect everything and choose sales reps, or you can just deselect each thing except for sales reps. And when I click OK, now I'm only looking at my sales representatives. So you can see here that our filter is pretty simplistic, but we do have more advanced ways too. And one of my favorite things about the filter and access is that you can toggle it on and off. So if you're like, wait, how many people did I have in employees? Oh, 9. Okay. Then I can go back to toggle filter and it'll toggle that last filter that I applied. So I can click on it again. I'm like, oh, okay, I have 6 sales reps. And then click it off. I have 9 employees altogether. Now, right over here on the drop down, you'll also see that we have the ability to select or filter based on the column. And these are comparison operators like equals, does not equal, equal to, between, greater than, all those fun things. So if you click into any of these, let's say I only want to see cities that are from London, I can go to selection, and now you'll see equals London, does not equal London, contains London, because I'm actually clicked on London. If I was clicked on Redmond, and I went to selection, now it's talking about Redmond. So wherever you're selected is what you're affecting. So maybe I just want to see London. I'm going to go to selection, contains London. Now look how cool that is, right? And then I could toggle that off and back on. Now we do also have advanced filters. So if you go to the filters, you'll see we can clear all the filters. That clears the toggle now, so you can't use that toggle on or off. Clears it fully. And we can filter by form. And if you give that a click, it's going to open up here and you're able to now choose what you want to filter from. For instance, I'll go here and I'll select sales manager. And then I can toggle the filter. And now I'm only looking at the sales manager. Or I toggle it off again and it brings back everything. I could go back to advanced, clear all filters. Let's do that again, but this time we'll filter. And let's filter for US, the USA. And when I toggle the filter, you always got to click toggle afterwards. You'll see now that it's toggling it to USA only. And then we could toggle the filter off or back on. So that's a fun one. That's filter by form. We also have apply filter / sort. Now, that's not going to really do anything right now. Of course, if I go to advanced, apply the filter, nothing's happening because, well, I don't have anything that I'm filtering by. You do also have advanced filters and sorting, which will bring you into, once again, that kind of look like the design view. And then we can go in and we could choose what we want to filter out. Maybe, once again, I just want to see the country, and the criteria would be USA. And then I can toggle that filter, and it's only showing me USA. And then I can toggle it off. So you can do many different ways. Filter by form, apply filter or sort. You'll see now it's applying it, or advanced filter or sort. And that will bring you back here. And you can always go back to advanced. Pretty much applying the filter or sort is the same exact thing as just clicking on the toggle filter. 2 ways to do the same thing, right? So it's up to you on if you just want to click apply, and it applies it, or if you toggle. You'll notice that there's other types of filters too. It's not just, and you can go to advanced first before we talk about this and clear all the filters. But if you want, when you click on the dropdown, let's say I'm in this first name field, right? A first name is what? It's a string of text or just characters. But if you click the dropdown, you'll see we have what's known as text filters, and we have comparison operators again. If we go over to a date and we want to filter dates, we have date filters, right? This month, last year, this quarter, and we have a ton of different ones we can choose. in the past, in the future. And then if it's just a number, let's see, we might not have a number here, but maybe the extension would be nice. If you click on extension, it's still put in as number filters. That's okay. Let's see if we have a good example here. Text filters. Maybe in our IDs, we have something for number. Oh, there they are. Number filters, right? So if it's a numerical value, it's going to be number filters. And then you have your comparison operators. If it's a text value, you have text filters, and you can use those. And then, of course, if it's just simply a date, we have date filters, right? So try out all these filters. There's so many of them, a lot of fun. Try sorting, filtering, manipulating the data any way that you like. And when we come back, we're going to actually close out this file, Northwind, and we're going to create our tables from scratch. It's going to be a lot of fun. Next thing we're going to do here is create a table. And we're going to be using the blank database template. But just take a moment here to see that we do have access to other templates, right? You can click into more templates. And by the way, if your startup screen looks a little different than mine, it's probably because you have a varied version, right? So you could have a different version than I do. I'm running 365. No worries. You should still have access to templates. You could give that a click, and you can see all the pre-existing templates that Microsoft created for us. Now we're going to be using the blank database. So I'm going to click on that one, or you go back home and click on blank database. And when you do click on the blank database, it's going to prompt you to just simply name it. Okay? So we're going to name this Access Fun. And I usually don't do any spaces. This is just a standard in dealing with database language. So typically, anytime you create any type of column or field or database, you don't put a space. Otherwise, you'd have to do an underscore, because that's just the way that the syntax and formatting works with database. So I'm going to just call it Access Fun, all one word, and then I'm going to click Create. Now, by default, we get one table. And in this table, we have one ID, right? This column is called ID, and it's also marked as the primary key. So in our view, right now we're given the data sheet view. We could go to design view, and it's going to automatically ask you to name the table, right? It's going to prompt you to name it. So I'm going to go, and we can name this anything we want. Let's actually call this table employees. We're going to create an employees table and click OK. Now, once again, the first column that you get is called ID. And you'll see the little key there. You'll see it's called ID, and it also has a data type, right? Now, every single time you create a table, it comes with this first column. It's usually called ID, and then we could change that, and it's marked as a primary key. Now, a primary key can be turned on or off. You can either right-click on it and just deselect primary key, and now it's no longer, or you could click on the column, and up top, under your table design tab, you'll see the tools, and you'll see primary key, and you can toggle that on, and then I'll put a little key indicator there. The reason the primary key is important is because it helps us to create the relationships between multiple tables. So every table usually has a key, a primary key, that it can then match up with another table with relative data, and it creates those relationships. All right? So right now we only have one column, and we're actually going to change this ID column to employee ID. So I'm just going to add in employee and then keep it ID, once again, without spacing. Now, this is standard in database naming convention, so I'm not going to put the spacing, and also I'm going to keep this as a auto-numbered data type. So that just simply means sequential order. Now, let's create another column here next to employee ID, and we're going to call this, let's do first name. That'll be good. So we're going to do first name. And the data type, right? We have a full list of different data types. We have short text, long text. We have number, large number, data time, date time extended, currency, auto number, yes, no, LE or OLE checked, hyperlink, attachment calculated, and lookup wizard. We're going to go through most of these today. All right. So if you're wondering, what should I have this data type be? Well, we're going to make it a short text because really it's just a first name. I don't foresee it being anything more than a short text. But if you don't know what data types are and you're wondering, what do all these other ones mean? There's actually a really cool keyboard shortcut. If you click into the data type and you press the function key 1, so that's that key up top, usually as the F1 through F12. If you press F1 function key 1, you might have to hold down the Fn key also on your keyboard. So once you click on that, it's going to open up the actual data type properties. And we can see all the different data types right here. Now, it used to be that there was text and memo. Those are actually replaced. So text was replaced with short text, and that's in 2013. So if you do have 2013, or maybe you have a previous version, you might still see text instead of short text, but they're the same. Same thing with memo and long text. Memo became long text. So that was replaced once again in 2013, right? And you can also see the size. So short text is up to 255 characters long, and a long text is up to 63,000 characters, almost 64,000. That's a lot. We have numbers for numerical data, right? We have date and time. We have currency. We have auto numbers, which is that sequential number system. Yes or no, which can be evaluated as true or false or on or off. OLE object, right? Objects such as like Microsoft Excel or Word or any type of document that you want to embed. You can do hyperlinks, which can be text or combinations of text. And those can also be hyperlinked to maybe a OneDrive or maybe hyperlinked to an address. You have attachments that supports any type of file. Now, you will see here that it'll even explain attachment fields provide greater flexibility than the OLE object. Because you might be thinking, well, Joe, you just said that OLE object is an Excel file, which it is. But they've then created attachments, and it's a little more, I would say, efficient than the OLE objects. But of course, you could still use them. There's not like a crazy preference there. Lookup wizard, this allows us to create a field that allows us to look up from another table. I'll actually do a couple of these today as well, right? So those are all your different data types, and you can read through, pick which one makes the most sense to you, and I'll just close that out and get back to my Access file. And we're going to now create a couple more, just a couple more columns. Also note that we have the ability not only to come up with a field name and data type, but we can also describe what this field is going to be. If you want to give a description and say, this is just the person's first name, you could do that if you wanted to. I'm not going to use this today because it is optional, and we'll just focus on the fields and data types, but just know that this is available. I'm going to create a couple more columns. Let's do a last name column. And it's going to be defaulted to short text, which is fine. We'll then let's do an email. We'll keep that a short text too. Let's do a phone number. And we'll keep that a short text. You're probably wondering why we would keep this a short text. It's because it's 255 characters. And typically a phone number, an example of a phone number would be open parentheses, right? 888, close parentheses, 888, dash symbol 8888. So those parentheses and dash symbols won't work well if we say we want this to be a number or a large number, right? Because a number is a number, parentheses and dashes, those are characters. That's why we're using short text. But we'll get into formatting a little later. Let's do department as well. And department can be a short text. But let's switch up a data type. Let's do one we haven't done. Let's do hire date. And we're going to make that, of course, the date and time, right? Because it's the date. We'll do salary. We'll also add in a number data type here as well. And we'll make that a number. Right, so we have all the different types of columns now. And if I want to go back now to just see what my table is going to look like, I can go over to the view, right? We can either find the view in the home tab and click on view, or we can be in table design tab and click on view. And when we do that, we can go to data sheet view. It'll say you must save the table first, of course. We'll click yes. Now we have employee ID, first name, last name, right? And it looks perfect. So all we've done so far is created a table from scratch. We've created our columns now with the data types for those columns. When we come back, we're going to talk about field properties. So how we can choose the size or caption properties, default values, all the different things that we can go into for our field properties. Now that we have our column fields, what we're going to do next is go into the field properties and change different things and manipulate the field settings. Things like the amount of characters we can have in each field, or even the way that we write it. Instead of having it first name with no space, we can actually fix those things. So the first thing we're going to do is head over to the view command here, and we're going to switch this back into our design view. So you'll see when you click into each field name, like first name, down at the bottom, we get field properties. And this is where we could change things like the size or the amount of characters. We can put in a formatting. So how do we want it to look? Maybe we want to format it like a currency. We have input mask. We're going to talk about input masks for quite a while, so we'll hold off on that one. And then we have caption. Caption is a way to rewrite. So for instance, it says first name here without a space. If we don't want to display it like that in our table, we can use the caption. So let's go through some of these. First off, for the first name, I don't think it's going to be 255 characters. It's a name. So you might want to change that to 50. Right? And then we can force people to put in up to 50 characters. If we give them up to like 255, then they can start writing whatever they want, maybe even a paragraph. So this is why you like to use different field sizes. The next one is going to be our caption. This is where we can label the field differently. So instead of it being first name without a space, we're going to make it first name with a space. We can even put a default value, right? And we'll talk about how we can force using, let's say, the hire date, and we can put a default value in there for the hire date. We'll get into our input masks and also creating custom input masks, right? But let's go through right now and just change up some of the sizing and the captions for each. So for the first name, we know it's a short text. It's going to be 50, and we're going to say first name there. We can also choose that it's required. So under required, right now it's saying it's not required, so they can move on without entering the data. We're going to change this to yes by just typing in yes, just like that. So now our first name is all set up. It's forcing 50 characters. It's going to have a different label, and we require it to be filled out. We're going to do this with last name too. So click into that, change the field size to 50. The caption is going to be a last name with a space, and we're going to require it. And that looks amazing. Now, when we get into email, we have to put something a little different here, right? Because at the moment, we have our short text. That looks good. But an email is probably 25 characters long. It's not that long. But another thing we have to talk about is being able to create masks. Now, input masks allow for us, once again, to create some sort of pattern or some sort of forced formatting, right? So for instance, for an email, I may want to put in, I don't know, maybe at company.com, something like that. So what we can do is when you click into input mask, you can actually press the function 1 key, just like we did before. So we can use F1 to get more information about the input mask, right? So if you click into input mask, you can press F1. It's going to open up, and now we have the input mask property for access. Now we're going to be using the text box input mask property because that's what we're talking about, our text. And you'll see all the different syntax for it. So it'll tell you, for instance, the characters. A 0. Well, a 0 means it's required, right? 0 to 9 entry is required. So you can enter in a digit. This would be really great when we start talking about our phone numbers. We can choose what's required or not. And then underneath we have 9. 9 represents an optional, right? So you can put in a digit or a space, but it's optional. It's not required. You have pound, you have question mark. Question mark means a letter A to Z, and it's optional, right? So this one's going to work really well for us, especially for our email, because we want them to be able to put in an email, but it's optional. So another thing here that I want to look at is maybe I want everything in the email to be lowercase. So if you put in a greater than or less than sign, you can either convert it to lowercase or uppercase. So let's try this out. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to exit out of this. And for our email, I want to give them the option to put in as many characters, but I want them to be lowercase. So I'm going to use that, right? Less than. And then I'm going to use a ton of question marks just like that. So I give them optional spacing if they need to write out maybe their name, dot, last name, whatever they need. After this, I'm going to put in quotes, what? And then the domain, which would be company.com. And then you can close those quotes. So all we're telling the system right now is that when you go into an email, if we bring it back to data sheet view, we'll save the table. When you go into email, it now gives all that spacing and then at company.com. That way they can write in their email, and then they can also have the domain already existing, which is going to help them out so they don't have to type in the whole thing or say, what's the domain? It already has it there as a placeholder. For the caption, we'll keep it because email is email. It's one word. There's no space. So we don't have to worry about putting captions for the rest of these. But let's talk about phone number next, right? Phone numbers, we're going to use input masks as well. So for the phone number is typically no longer than 10 digits, but you might want to count for the parentheses or dashes. So we'll put 20 field size. It's going to still stay a short text, but this time for the input mask, we're actually going to use what's known as the input mask wizard. And you can access this by clicking the 3 dots. You'll see when you click in the input mask, you get 3 dots over here on the right, and that's going to open up our wizard. And it'll say you have to save the table, click yes, and it's going to open up and say input mask wizard. Now they already have pre-existing masks in here, things like phone numbers, social security, passwords. So they have a ton of different placeholders here, and you can even try it out by clicking in and seeing what it looks like. So it just gives them a structure or guide to actually write their phone number. Now we're going to choose phone number and click next. And you'll notice that those numbers from before show up. 999, zeros. Remember that the 9s mean they don't have to put in the area code, it's optional. And the zeros mean you're required to put in those numbers. If you want to require all of it, you would just simply change those 9s to zeros, like that. And then you can try it out. You can even choose the placeholder character if you wanted to. Maybe you don't want it to be underlines. Maybe you want it to look like, pound signs. So it looks like that. I actually like the pound signs. It's not horrible. Maybe even, yeah, that looks good. Well, that looks like it's kind of hidden. So maybe the pound signs look a little better as a placeholder. And that looks very great. Now I'm going to click next. It's going to ask us how we want to store the data. Do we want it to actually include the symbols or without? Usually when you store data, you don't want parentheses or dashes. Maybe you just want it to be numerical. So that's why they give you the option here. In most databases, when you store things like phone numbers or social security numbers, they don't have the dashes or the parentheses in them. So totally up to you. I'm going to click next and then finish. So our phone number is all set up. It looks great. The next one is going to be department. And this one's going to be a little easier. We're going to make it 50 size. So allow for 50
But for this one, let's actually use the default value, right? We haven't done that one yet. Default value can be the value that's already in there. Let's say that there's a lot of sales reps that we're entering into the data set, and there's rarely anyone else. Well, then it'd be really a smart idea to put sales, right? That way, when you're in the table, and we'll save that, it already has sales in there. If you need to change it, you can. But since we're mostly putting in employees in the sales department, it's one less thing we have to fill out. So it's a good idea to sometimes use that default value. The next one is the hire date. And this is where, once again, we're going to use the default value, but we're going to use it a little differently. For the hire date, you will notice there is no character size because it's already formatted as a date. So you'll see date and time. What we can do here, though, is we can choose to change the default value. And we're going to, once again, click those three dots next to the default value. That's going to open up what's known as the expression builder. And this builder is going to help us to default to today's date. That way we don't always have to go look at the date and enter it in. Whenever we enter in an employee, it automatically will capture the date. So this is going to help us out a lot. So the first thing we're going to do here, and by the way, if you want to change the caption to hire date, you can. I just noticed the space. So after we do our builder, we'll then change that as well. So for this one, once you're in the builder, you have your functions. So if you've ever used functions before like Excel or Google Sheets, this is the same thing. We have built-in functions that Microsoft determined for us, and you can see all these different ones here in categories like date and time. And the one that we want to use is going to be known as the date, and it just returns the system's date. Now you could use another one known as now, and that's going to return the system date and time. All right, but I just want the date, so I'm going to use date, double click, and that's it. We can click OK. And whenever we now fill out the table, you'll have to save. It'll automatically have the date for that entry. Pretty cool, okay? And the last thing I might want to do there is just change the caption to hire date with a space. That way, now you'll see when we switch over, they all look really nice. The last thing you can do here is just simply make sure your captions are done, make sure you have your masks in, take a look at different default properties, but take a moment to try this out. And then once you do that, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create one more column. We're going to call it referral. And I want to just showcase how we can use the lookup wizard. So we're going to use a different data type that we haven't used yet. So after salary, I want you to put in referral. So we're going to see if there's a referral. Was this person referred? Were they not referred? And then we can choose for the data type. This time, we can choose yes, no. And what this yes, no does is it actually creates a checkbox. So if you go back over to the data view after saving, you'll see the little checkbox. You can either check it, which is going to be true or yes, or uncheck it, which is false or no. What we could also do is we can choose to create a lookup for the department. So the yes and no is great, but when we go back to the department field, you saw how the default value was sales. What happens instead if I want to create a drop-down list for the department column instead of just sales? Maybe I want sales, research, IT, and maybe development too. So for this, we're going to use what's known as the lookup wizard. And that lookup, I'm just going to take out that default value, is going to be right next to general. So where we've been in the field properties, but right next to it. You'll see that the display control is right now a text box, which is fine. But what we want to do is we can now go in and update this and make it a list, right? So when I click into list, now it's a list box and it's asking me what we want to put in here. So the row source is going to be whatever that list is. Now, you can show the row source type. It's a table or a query. We could click the drop down and then choose whatever we want. But for this one, I'm going to say it's going to be a value list, and we're going to put in what we want our values to be. So I'm going to say, let's do what I just said, sales. And we could separate each entry by a comma. Let's also do research. Let's do, what did I say? IT and development. And now we have a nice box here that tells us value list. It's a list box, and it's going to show us the source of that list. And when we go back now, what we can do is go to view after you save. And if you click in the drop down, we now have sales, research, IT, or development. Pretty cool. Now there is a wizard for this so that you don't have to do it on your own. So if you wanted to, you can do a lookup on your own, right? But I typically like to create them from going into the lookup field like that. But it's totally up to you. If you wanted to change the default value, right? And then you click the little wizard, you can do a list or a lookup. But for me, I just like going into the lookup and doing it this way. So try that out on your own. And then when we come back, we're going to get into creating more tables. Now, before we go into creating more tables, once again, remember, we just did that lookup for department, which is really nice. But if you were like, I do want to use the wizard, the way you would do this is just by clicking on the data type and choosing the lookup wizard. This is going to open up the wizard. You can either get the fields from values from another table, or you could tell it, I'll type in what I want. And then you'll just simply start typing in the values. And then you'll put the label, department, and then you'd finish. But we already did that on our own. So if you like the lookup the way we did it this way, you're more than welcome to, where you just choose value list, put in your source. Or if you want to click on the dropdown and use the lookup wizard, you could. 2 ways to do the same thing. What we're going to get into next is creating more tables. So I'm just going to save this table. This table looks good. And we're going to create another table. So let's go over to the Create tab, and we're going to click on Table. Now, once we click on Table, it's going to open up the table, and we're going to go to the Design view, right? And we'll just enter in a couple more tables here. Let's call this table the Projects table. We're going to create the Assignments table as well, and then we'll link them all together. So let's call this table Project, or Projects with an S. And now we're going to build it out just like we did before. I'm going to call this the project ID. And that's going to be that auto number, that sequential number there. I also want the project name. Let's do the project name as a short text. I want the project description. We'll say the start date, and that's going to be a date. We'll do the end date, right? Projects usually have start dates, end dates. And then we'll do the budget. And that'll be a numeric value, a number. Now, of course, feel free to go into each one, and you can do a caption. For instance, project ID, right? Project name. So you're more than welcome to go in on your own and do this. Project name. You can also do it a little quicker just by copying and then pasting and putting a space. If you're a slow typer like me, that's always fun to do. And we have one more. Date and date. Just like that. And I think that looks good. We're not going to get into too many of the field properties in this section, but I'm happy with this table. Let's take a look at it. And of course, you can expand the columns. And this looks great. I'm happy with it. So we have our employees table now, and we have our projects table. We're going to create one more table. It's going to be the assignments table. So let's go to create table. We'll bring it into that design view, and we'll name the table assignments. And for this one, we're going to call this the assignment ID. Let's do the employee ID, the project ID, and also the assignment date. And that's going to be a date. And once again, you can go into each one and change the caption. That way it looks nice on our table. And there we go. And this one's going to be a smaller table. I think those columns are perfect. Let's do the assignment date. Okay. And we'll save that table. Once we go back to the data sheet, I'm going to expand my columns again. And there we go. We now have the employees table, projects table, and the assignments table. So this is looking awesome. Now, the reason why we created these three tables is because we are going to start talking about table relationships. What I want you to really do right now is practice your data entry skills. You're going to go into each table, and I don't mind how many you do. You could do 3 or 4, maybe just 3 on each. I want you to enter in 3 employees. You could use fake names, your friends' names, family names, your name. We're going to use project names, create a couple of fake things, a fake project, a little description, nothing too crazy there. Some start and end dates and a fake budget. And then assignments, you'll put in the employee ID and just do this one with me. The assignments we'll do together because we're going to talk about why we created this assignments table. It's actually got a big purpose. So you can enter in the employees and the projects, but for now, just enter in the same IDs as me. So the first ID, we're just going to keep it in sequential order. We're going to do 1, and this project is going to be 1. And let's just choose a random date. We'll use 05/15/2014. I don't know. Or if you want to do 24, that's fine. Employee ID 2, right? Project ID 2. And let's go with 5/20/2024. And then we'll have 3, project ID 3. And then let's choose 29th. And now this one's going to be something we're going to talk about. So we're going to put employee 1 again, because maybe this employee has multiple projects they're working on. And we're going to put project 2 again. So employee 1 is working on project ID 1. Employee 1 is also working on project ID 2, right? There's 2 people on that one. Once again, we'll talk about that in a moment. And they were assigned this, let's say, the same day as the other person was, so 5/20. And then we can save this. And what I want you to do now is take a moment to fill in employees and projects. Just do 3 on each. That's it. Just 3 employees, 3 projects. And then when we come back, we'll go over why we have this assignments table and how to create table relationships with all of them. Now that we have our tables, we have our employees. I put 3 employees here. We have our projects, 3 projects, and then our assignments we did together. Now that we have this, we may want to start to create relationships within these, right? Like, for instance, what projects are each employee, like John Doe, working on? And we would get that little plus icon we saw from before where we could drill down on our data. Now, before we can create our relationships, if I wanted a relationship between employees and projects, I would have to include an employee ID to the projects table. That way I can assign an employee to each project. But that would get really redundant, right? Because let's say that we had duplicates. Maybe one employee is working on multiple projects. Well, then we would have to write the project multiple times and have each employee in each of those projects. And once again, that can cause a lot of duplications, which we don't want. Which brings us to why we used the assignments table and we created this table that has both the employee IDs, the project IDs, and the assignment dates. Here we can have multiples, right? So I have the employee ID multiple times here, and I don't mind because it's not really affecting my projects or my employees. So the assignments table is known as a junction table, and this table will help us to link the other two tables together. For now, let's just create a relationship from employees table to the assignments table. So how do we do that? If you remember, we went into database tools, and in that tab, that's where you'll find relationships, and we're going to give that a click. So once I click on relationships, I will then see my 3 tables here on the side where I can add them by just double clicking on them. So let's add in the employees table, and you'll see it here, or remember we can resize this. And let's click in the assignments table. Now to create the relationship, I'm going to just simply click and drag on the columns that make my relationship. For instance, employee ID is also found here in assignments to employee ID. And what it's going to do is when you click and drag, either way, you could go right to left or left to right, it's going to make that connection and we can create it right away. But before we get into that, I do want to talk about some of the different relationship settings that we see here. So first off, you're going to see these 3, and you'll see enforce referential integrity. What does that mean? Well, this just helps you to keep your data clean and consistent. By enforcing these rules, Access makes sure that your data always makes sense and that there's no broken links between the related tables. And if you try to break these rules, Access will actually stop you. It'll give you an error message. So this just helps you to avoid messing up your data by mistake. The next one is known as Cascade Update Related Fields. And this option helps to maintain the integrity of your data. And it does this by automatically updating related records in child tables when a primary key value is updated in the parent table. So it saves you time, right? And reduces the risk of data inconsistencies that might be caused by manual updates. So if something updates, it'll then update inside of the child as well. Now, the last one is known as Cascade Delete Related Records. This one's a little scary. I'll talk about that in a second. But what it does is it helps maintain integrity of your data by automatically deleting related records in the child table when a primary key record is deleted from the parent table. So if I delete an employee ID from employees, well, then it's going to delete that in assignments too. The scary part about that, though, is we don't want to turn this option on always. I use this option with caution because it can permanently delete data from your database. So if I delete employee ID number 1 in the employees table, every single case of employee ID 1 in the assignments table is now deleted. That's why it's so scary. It's great because it ensures that you don't want to end up with like an orphan record, right? But it's also scary because you could delete a ton of records at once by accident, and there's no way to redo it, right? Or undo it. So we want to be careful turning that on. We're actually not going to turn any of these on right now. We also have join types. We're going to actually talk about joins in some detail in our next video. So we'll keep that for later, but just know that by default, the join type that we're going to be using here is just simply going to be an inner join, which means everything from the employee ID, employees table, and everything that matches the assignments employee ID in that table, right? So we'll click create new, right? Or create, just the create button. You don't want to click create new on that one. You're going to right click and you can always go back and edit it. You can look at the join type. We'll talk about all of these. but now we have the connection, which is perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. So now that we have that relationship, we can go back, right? We'll close this out, keep the layout, save the changes. And if we go into projects or employees, you might notice, wait a second, where's the icon? Well, we've only created a relationship between employees and assignments. And since this is the junction, we have to go back now and do the projects. So we're going to go back into relationships. We're going to add the projects table here. We're going to now create a relationship between the project ID and projects and the project ID and assignments, and click create. And now we've created, through the junction, employees and projects relationship. Now we can close this, click save. And now if I go into employees or projects, we'll be able to drill down on that data, right? Now you might not see it right now because, well, the icon's not there, right? But when we save the table, we're going to click on save and we close these out and we reopen them. You'll now see the plus. So if you don't see the plus at first, that's okay. You'll get it. And then the plus is going to be here as well. So now I can go in and I could say, okay, employee 1, who is John Doe, what projects are John working on? Give that a click. And it says this expression is typed incorrectly. So it's probably talking about some sort of numeric. Let's see on this one if it's doing the same thing. And that's okay. We'll take a look at that in a moment. And let's open up our assignments. That looks perfect. Our employee ID, our project ID, those look good. But I'm wondering why it's not working. Well, let's take a look. If we go back into the design, we see here employee ID is a text. Oh, okay. So it's a text. Employee ID, project ID, they're both text. Let's see what happens if we turn them into a number, right? We have to delete the relationship first. So we'll go into relationships. Let's delete those out. And this is good troubleshooting. So if you're ever getting these little errors, you can always go back and take a look at them. So now that we have that, let's go in and see the employee ID is an auto number. But then in my assignments, it's a short text. So it's not matching. So when we created this, we had to change the data type to number and to number. And now that we've done this, I'll save it up. I'll say yes, perfect. We can now go in and create those relationships again, and it's going to work beautifully. So let's try that. So I'm going to take employee ID to employee ID, create. We're going to take project ID to project ID, create. And now we're going to save it all, close out everything, and let's see if it works for us. Let's open up employees, click the little plus. How cool is that? So now I can see that John Doe is working on projects 1 and 2. So John Doe has 2 projects they're working on. If I click into Jane Smith's only working on 1 project, and Michael Johnson's only working on 1 project. If we open up the projects table, it does the opposite. Okay, website design is John Doe. Okay, new launch project is John Doe and Jane Smith. And marketing campaign is Michael Johnson. Now you might be thinking, Joe, this is a little confusing, right? Because when we're looking at the data, how do I know which employees which or which project we're talking about? Because all we can see is the IDs. Wouldn't it be cool if we could see who this project 1 is assigned to? Instead of a 1, maybe John, right? Instead of a 2, Jane. Instead of a 3, Michael. Yes, we can. We're going to go over how to use the lookup wizard to create those relationships and how to enter in the data in the related tables next. Okay, so catch up to now. And then when we come back, we're going to enter in data in related tables, and we're going to use lookup wizard to create the relationships. So now that we have our data entered into the related tables, and we see that we can use the little minus to collapse or the plus to expand, we're thinking instead when I go into project ID 1, website redesign, and I click on it, I want to see John's name here, not just the one. It's very confusing. And vice versa. When I click into John Doe, I want to see the actual project names, not just the project IDs, right? So how do we do this? Well, the first thing we need to do is delete the relationships, right? Because as you saw before when we were troubleshooting, we can't make changes when the relationships exist. So what we want to do is go to Database Tools, Relationships, and just right-click and delete those all first. And don't worry, we'll bring them back in a moment. Then we need to go to the assignments table. So open up the assignments table, and here is where we're going to make our lookup wizard. So we've used the lookup wizard in a previous section of this training video, but let's go to View, Design View, and we're going to actually now use the lookup wizard, right? I showed you how to do it through lookup section in the fields property here, but now we're going to actually use it here. So we're going to change the employee ID data type. Right now, the employee ID data type is a number. We're going to change that to lookup wizard. All right, lookup wizard. Now, since we're choosing to take the employee ID and it's already in the employees table and we have the employee names there, instead of last time where I said we'll type the text manually, we're actually going to say we want a lookup field to get the values from another table, and we're going to click next. We're going to choose that table being the employees and click next. Then we can choose exactly what we want the field to look like. And we're going to say the first name and the last name, right? And we can either double click or you can just click it and then add it over. I like to do the double click. We'll click next. And then it's going to ask you if you want to do any sort of ascending or descending order. I'll start with first name. I think that'll be fine in ascending order as the sort. And we'll click next. So now it's Jane Smith, John Doe, Michael Johnson. And we'll click next, finish, and say yes. So we've now done that for the employee ID. We're going to do the same exact thing for the project ID. Now I know it still says number here as the data type, but if you go into the lookup, you'll see that the lookup is filled out. If I go into this lookup, there's nothing. So that's how you can be sure that the lookup wizard actually worked. So I'm going to click on the project ID dropdown and choose lookup wizard. Once again, I'll keep this, click next. This time I want to do, right, for my projects table, and I want the project name. And then I'll click next. We can put it in ascending order, the project name. Next. It has our 3 projects. Next. And finish. And we'll say yes, save the table. Now that we've done this, we can close this out and we can build a relationship. You'll notice it did create one relationship already for us right here. If we right click and edit it, you'll see it's employee. So that's perfect. That's what we wanted. So we have our 2 relationships now back. If you need to click and drag to create one, go ahead. And now we're going to save all of this and let's see if it worked. So when I open up the employees table and I'm like, what's John working on? I click that little plus icon. How cool is this? John's working on the website redesign and the new product launch. Jane is working on the new product launch as well. And Michael's working on that marketing campaign. And when I close this out, I can look at the projects now. Who's working on the website redesign? Click the little plus icon. Oh, it's John. Who's working on the new product? Jane and John. Who's working on? Okay, Michael. And that's really awesome, right? So as we can see here, that lookup wizard can help us out, especially if we need more information and we don't want to be so confused on just looking at IDs, right? Because I'm not going to memorize 50 employee IDs. I'd rather see their names. All right, so try that out on your own, and then we'll get into our closing. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this course. I hope you got a lot out of it. This is only our introduction level course. We will have 2 more videos out for you, intermediate and advanced. But thank you for spending time with me. I hope you enjoyed the course. I hope that you're going to feel much more confident with Access. It's a great database application. And yeah, thank you so much.